Thanks for joining us here on Folkin Around the World. I'm your host, Ciaran McGhee, as always. On today's episode, we are chatting with Edinburgh native and obviously Scottish folk musician Ciaran McGhee, talking about his last couple of releases, what he's doing during the lockdown, shutdown, reopening, whatever you want to call it. And talking about the Scottish music and folk community.
Good. That's a little bit better. I'm now connected to the home Wi-Fi and it's better from my end. It's better from your end?
It's a little bit better, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll
actually, it seems to be improving. So.
They said we
right.
wasted
Before we record it, I'll change my name from my fiance's name to my name, so that if anyone.
That's a good call. And I will put up your I'll put up like a graphic, like a graphic with your name and a graphic with links and stuff, and I'll put it all in the description of the video. And all of those good things.
One of the little sad moments, make it all change.
All right, so thanks for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ciaran McGhee. I pointed the wrong way, the mirroring thing in Zoom. I'm not used to it yet. So why don't you start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about both the kinds of music that you play when you're playing shows and also the kinds of stuff that you write, because they're similar, but they are a little bit different.
Yeah, so my name's Ciaran. I live here in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and I play music full time. Before things went a wee bit pear-shaped, I played music full time. During the week, I generally do kind of 5 to 7 gigs in the bars and pubs in Edinburgh, which is great fun. And in that capacity, I'll be playing traditional Scottish folk music as well as your pub songs and, your Neil Youngs and your Bruce Springsteens and your Johnny Cashes and ABBA, that kind of stuff. Just keeping people happy, putting a smile on people's faces. But my passion is for traditional music from Scotland and Ireland, which is where my mother's Irish, my father's Scottish. And that's where that all comes from. The stuff I write, I'm very influenced by the music I grew up with. I play guitar, and I didn't always play guitar. I played the piano accordion beforehand. And I turned 13, and suddenly testosterone was a thing. And Blink-182 and Green Day and Foo Fighters were the coolest guys in the world. So a lot of what I write is very influenced by kind of late 90s, early 2000s pop punk, which I think kind of comes across in some of my songs, especially the stuff I'm writing now that hasn't been released. And so yeah, it's all a big mixing pot,
That's awesome. So so you mentioned that some of your early influences were pop punk, were definitely not folk music. Did you ever play in a punk band or really give it a go in another genre?
I did. So I played traditional music in the beginning as a kid, and I was in ceilidh bands and traditional music groups and stuff like that. And then once the electric guitar became a thing, I formed a band in school with a couple of my friends, and we played together for maybe 2 years, 18 months, something like that. We got gigs, and of course, we were like 14 or something, and we thought, this is we're gonna be touring. Give it 6 months, and we'll be touring the world. And then 2 of the band members left, and there was a bit of kind of falling out, high stakes teenage drama. So I was devastated. I put a lot of my time and a lot of my kind of hopes into becoming a rock star. So I played in that band, but after that, I kind of became a bit bitter and relied on myself. And that's where the acoustic guitar came in, and the singer-songwriter kind of stuff, because I've held the philosophy, and I'm trying to get out of it, but I've held the philosophy that if I'm doing a solo act, I don't have to rely on anyone else. The gig will only be as good as I am, and I know that I'll give 100% for every gig, which is kind of intense. It's a kind of intense attitude to have, but it keeps me going. But I am in a band now. I'm in a Ceilidh band in Edinburgh, but for the first time, that's not my baby. I'm very much the guitarist in the band, and the violin player is the leader. He does all of the front man stuff, and I show up and I play guitar and I dance on stage, and it's great fun. So that's cool as well. But in terms of kind of starting my own band, I had a project a couple of years ago with a couple of guys on the Edinburgh scene. We were called Kishmo, and we were trying to do a kind of Lankum meets Emar meets Talisk kind of thing. And the music was great, but it was intense, and my own attitude, as I said, I was relying on other people to provide 100%, and when I felt that they weren't providing that 100%, I was getting frustrated. So we ended up breaking up after 18 months again. So yeah, I'm not really painting a great picture of myself, to be honest. But
well, bands are difficult, though. I mean,
yeah,
my band, we've certainly had like a lot of ups and downs, and even to this day, even when we're talking about like the silliest things, people can have very strong opinions on those, and it can be really tough. And everybody has different schedules. Everybody's levels of commitment kind of fluctuate, according to the circumstances of their life, right? But when you're in a circumstance where you want to do 100% and really go for it, and you have bandmates who can't, for whatever reason, there are lots of legitimate reasons that you can't. That can be really tough. So I don't think you're painting a bad picture of yourself at all. It's a very realistic picture of somebody who's driven, and it can be hard to find other people that are that driven and want to work that hard to be able to like achieve something and to push like yourselves and your music forward.
I am working on a project. It's kind of on the back burner right now. I'm working with a guy who's in a band that tour quite extensively throughout the year, but he's our age, and the other two guys in the band are older gentlemen. So he's kind of creating the contingency plan, and that will involve the two of us. Now, this guy that I'm talking about is incredibly driven. He's very like me. It's like we show up, we do the gig well, and people have a smile on their face and they remember a good night, and everything else is left at the door, which is my kind of attitude. I could have taken, some guy could have tried to kick my teeth in. But as soon as I get on that stage, I'm like, right, these people are more important now. These songs are more important now. Let's do it and do it well, because all of that stuff in 2 45 minutes or 2 hours or 3 45 minutes worth of time is all still going to be there. But you'll definitely feel better after you've played this gig and played it really well. So just give the gig everything. So that might come about. Watch this space. You might be hearing some banging trad in about a year's time.
Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, that's one of the things about playing folk music that's great, is that like it's about the show. It's about, playing it well to do honor to the folk tradition, to the tradition of those songs, right? But ultimately, like, it becomes a fun experience that people will remember. I mean, that's kind of how we got associated. I just stumbled on you playing at a pub in Edinburgh right off of Princes Street, and you noticed that I knew the words. I was just happy to find some place that was playing Scottish folk music. Even in Scotland, it's not super common.
Not super common, no. Which like it's not the sexiest music in the world. It's not the brightest music in the world, but it definitely, like, you could have two people at a rock concert and they're gonna have like, oh, I'm a fan of the 1975. Oh, I'm a fan of the 1975 too. 1975 are a great band. Good to see you. And then they go away. Whereas when you meet a folkie, the conversation is a much deeper conversation. People get really into it. I mean, we met by chance in a bar, and now we're having Skype calls every week, and we're talking about music, and we're doing things like this. If I come over to America, I'll probably be visiting you. Next time you come over here, you'll definitely be visiting me, and we'll just sit with guitars and do the thing, and it's another aspect of folk music. It's great, and it stimulates these conversations because it's more than love songs, and it's more than breakup songs. It's more than silly songs. It's all of these things together.
Well, it goes beyond generations, right? Like that's the great thing too, is you can run into somebody who's 90 years old and knows and loves these songs, and you can run into somebody who's 5 and knows and loves these songs, and they may have been exposed to them through different bands at different times, but there is something that's timeless just because a lot of the music is so old. So in the folk genre, who are some of your big inspirations?
First and foremost, beginning and end of my folk love is the Corries. That's where it began, and that's probably where it will finish. And that's quite as I've kind of progressed in my career as a musician, I found out that's quite a frowned upon thing to say. There's an attitude in Scotland towards the Corries from serious folk musicians, where they totally disregard everything that the Corries did. And the Corries aren't they weren't revolutionary, I don't think. They weren't cutting edge. They were just doing it really well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for the fun of it. Like they were, that's one of the things I love listening to the Corries, especially like their live albums, is that like you get the sense that like, and I think that's also why when, which one of them was it that passed away in the 80s? Roy Williamson. When he passed away, that's kind of why the Corries kind of faded into the background a little bit. The other musician, I'm having a giant brain fart right now.
Ronnie Brown.
Yeah, he played publicly some, but like for the most part, he was kind of done. But I also think that like it was some of that they were having so much fun, and you get that on the live albums. That when Roy Williamson died, that like it just wasn't the same feel or the same atmosphere.
There's a beautiful like Ronnie Brown made a speech at Roy Williamson's funeral. It was a beautiful speech, and he just went, "Look, I'm done. Why would I want to continue? We had such a nice thing, and anything that I try to do from now on," I'm paraphrasing, but anything that I want to do from now on, there's going to be a Roy Williamson shaped hole when I do it. So unfortunately, this is the end of the Corries, and I think he was absolutely right, because after that he did release a solo album, kind of harkening back to the greatest hits. And I love the Corries, and I've met Ronnie Brown. He's a really nice guy, and it was a real inspiration to meet him. But the album just, there was a Roy Williams shaped hole in the whole album, you know. And I could talk about the Corries until the cows come home, but my main influence is the Corries. Just I grew up in England, which wasn't my fault, and my dad had a pirated video. As you said, Roy Williamson died in 1990 or something. I was born in 93. My dad moved down to England in 88 or something like that. And my uncle, when Roy Williamson died, my uncle pirated, there was a load of concerts on the TV and in memoriam kind of thing. My uncle pirated them on like a 4-hour video. And I used to just sit and watch it from end to end and like play the Corries. Do you know what I mean? Like with a guitar with no strings, you know, singing all the songs. And I just love them. And that's where it starts. But then as you know, I got into Irish folk music from my mum, into Christy Moore and Planxty. And then from there I got into the Pogues. The Pogues are in as I mentioned before, the punk thing. Mm-hmm. When you hear the Pogues and you've been listening to, I was always aware of the Pogues. My dad is a massive fan of the Pogues, so I was always aware of them. But when you're listening to Green Day and Blink-182 and Foo Fighters and, you know, the Ramones, and then you hear the Pogues, you're like, all these other guys are doing it wrong, because this is how it's done. This is angry and energetic and funny and terrifying and heartbreaking and awesome, just boom, in a band. So if you're watching this video and you want a band that will blow your socks off, listen to the Pogues, and then listen to Lankum. They're good as well. But more in terms of now, what I'm listening to a lot is Lankum, the band I'm listening to. I'm also listening to kind of more bluesy, soul-y folk, Nathaniel Ratcliffe and the Night Sweats. Don't know if you know him.
Those are that's a Colorado band.
Yeah, he is a sexy man. He's great. Also listening to a band from New Jersey. They're called folk punk. Is their kind of genre. Mm-hmm. They're called the Front Bottoms. Big influence on them. I really like the songwriting style, but that's slightly more difficult to listen to because my fiance hates them. Because
folk punk as a genre is really starting to take off, and it stems from bands like the Pogues, Flogging Molly, Dropkick Murphys, who took kind of Celtic music as a general idea and punkified it. And now but now they're starting to do it with non-Celtic folk music. It's really, really interesting. I've got a few friends who are kind of in that scene, and we might have some of those people on some future episodes talking about kind of the development of that genre. What do you think makes great folk music?
This is interesting because I was in a Zoom workshop, and the workshop was titled "What Makes a Ballad Great." So I've kind of had this at the front of my mind for a wee while. I think it's mostly performance. You know, any song that's performed with integrity is gonna invoke a reaction from the audience. With folk music, we're lucky, I think, because a lot of the material that we as folk musicians work with it isn't, as I said, it isn't just breakup songs and it isn't just love songs. If you have a breakup song that's rooted in folk music, he didn't just get dumped. He got dumped and his dog got killed. And then a famine hit his field and then he committed suicide, and then his mother brought him back to life, and then he drowned his mother and drowned himself. And these weird things happen in folk music where you can have songs that have, you know, things that aren't that dissimilar from what I've just described. I mean, one of the songs that we spoke about in this workshop was the Queen's Four Marys, or Mary Hamilton. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah, no, I love that song. Another one we were talking earlier about my ill-fated couple of solo shows. That was one that I played there as well.
Well, in this workshop, you know, I that was the you know, what makes this ballad great, Mary Hamilton. And I was like, right, I know Mary Hamilton. I know the song. I sing it myself. This is going to be, I'm going to ace this. You know, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be, I know all the answers. She came out with this song, Mary Hamilton, and now me and you knowing this song, we would look at the lyrics and go, yeah, that's Mary Hamilton. Now, my interpretation of that song, Mary Hamilton and all the Queen's Four Marys, was there's the four handmaids and Queen Mary. And Queen Mary is sentenced to death. So instead of Queen Mary going to the gallows, she sends one of the handmaids, Mary Hamilton, and she is the substitute. And I've sang it like that for 5 years, 6 years. I don't know if that's the meaning that you take from the song.
My interpretation of it was a little different. I guess because I don't know. I always thought that the song was kind of set during Mary's time in France. So I always assumed that it was about one of the handmaidens, either that had got caught doing something kind of betraying the queen, or that they had gotten sick. And that had been kind of how I had played the song.
Okay, so this is as back to the last question. That's what I love about folk music, because I've taken this, my version is rather nice. You know, this noble lady sacrifices herself for her queen that she's devoted to. Then you've got this lady betrays the queen and is a wee bit naughty. This version that we were dealing with in this song, right? Handmaiden Mary Hamilton gets pregnant, has a baby, kills the baby, right? Mary Queen of Scots comes down and says, I heard a baby crying. Where's the baby? So she rips the bed apart. She finds the baby in a pillowcase, right? And then she says to the woman, you're going to be killed. You're going to hang from the gallows tree, right? Not because she killed the baby, but because she had sex out of wedlock. So she goes to the gallows tree in a red dress as a harlot because she had premarital sex. That's how messed up this ballad was. And I loved it. It was it was brilliant. So yeah, this is, one of the things is it takes, and she sang this, and we have da 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 da. Those Marys eating and Mary beating Mary Carmichael and me. It's very lilting, very lovely. This was like a pure dirge. It was like a funeral march, and she nailed it. She was singing it, and there was people crying, and it was brilliant. And that's one of the things is with folk music, what makes it so good is we have a lot of substance, historical substance, made up substance, really, really, really dark substance, or indeed really beautiful substance, like Go Lassie Go. You'll not get a nicer song. It's just really pretty, really nice to sing. So what makes folk music so great is it just is. Take my word for it.
So when it comes to either songs that you're choosing to play or when you're sitting down and songwriting, which we'll talk about that in just a bit, what are some of the themes and ideas that you find most intriguing? Because we were talking about how folk music is filled with a lot of really different ideas, approaches to stories, tones. What are the kinds of things that really get you excited about either a folk tune or about something that you're going to write?
I really like little snippets, like little turns of phrase I get really excited about in my writing and in what I listen to. If I hear a song, it could be like a piece of alliteration or a little musical line or a cadence on the chorus, and I'll be like, I love that. And I'll learn the whole song just because of this one bit. And then my appreciation for the song grows out of that. You know what I mean? It has to be a good song initially for me to be like, oh, this is nice. But it's usually these little bits of kind of seasoning that musicians put into these pieces of music. I'm like, oh, I need to learn that song just for that line. You know, one of the most recent songs I learned was Henry My Son by Lankum. And I learned it purely because there was a line about a blue suit, and me and my friends were listening to it, and we were making a little bit of a joke about how these Dublin singers sing suit, because they sing it like suet, a blue suet. And we were making this joke, and suddenly I was like, I have to learn this song. I have to learn it in its entirety because it's amazing. But I mean, that could be a musical line as well. So another song that I learned recently was May You Never by John Martin. And I had this notion, I was like, I love the melody, but I don't really like singing it, which is a weird thing. So what I did was I learned an intricate guitar part. I kind of soloed it. I could be like, I'm playing this really nice melody on the guitar. And once I'd done that, I was like, I need to learn it now. So the kind of one led into the other, and now I sing that song. It's my favorite song to sing because the two parts kind of come together and make an experience that's really enjoyable for me. And I feel when it's enjoyable for me, that translates to the audience, and the audience are like, wow, this guy's enjoying singing this song. I'm enjoying him enjoying singing this song. I'm enjoying myself, and then I get a kick off them enjoying themselves. And it's just this lovely kind of energy thing. It comes to me and goes to them, and great concert. And then we all go home and have a beer. It's great.
And I've always found that that's probably like the most important thing in terms of playing music for audiences, regardless of the genre you're doing, is that like, if you're entertaining yourself, you should be entertaining the crowd as well. Like, the crowd doesn't always know what they want to hear. If they knew what they wanted to hear, they would be playing it. So I think that's always a pretty solid approach.
And that gets a wee bit more difficult when you're doing long gigs, and you do have to do songs that you have to take a professional approach towards. You know, there's being happy, which shows naturally, and then there's performing a song and making sure you look happy as well. That's one of the things that I struggled with, because when you started off, you know, you get the guys coming in, can you do The Gambler by Kenny Rogers? And I hate that song. Like, it's a good song. I appreciate that it's a good song. I hate singing it. But if I'm sitting there going, whoa, nobody's going to enjoy that. So you've got to be on a whoa. That's brilliant. That kind of thing. Anyway, sorry. Wee bit of a tangent.
No, we've all got those songs, right? Especially, I mean, probably for any musician that's ever had to play a cover, which is like all of them. Mm-hmm. But particularly like for folk musicians, because you spend, even if you have a back catalog of original material, you still spend a lot of time playing the traditionals and playing covers. Speaking of originals, I've segued myself. I don't know that I did it well. Let's talk a little bit about your album. So your full-length album, Don't Quit Your Day Job, came out in 2017. It's great. I love it. I think I bought 2 copies so that I could keep one and send one to my sister. what are some things that you would want people to know about the album before they listen to it? And what are, if you had to pick one or maybe two songs from the album, let's say somebody's like, okay, I've got 6 to 8 minutes worth of time, what songs would you use to sell them on that album? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm making you choose amongst your children. I am a cruel person, and this is what I do.
I'll kind of try and answer all of that at once. The one thing that I found out about Don't Quit Your Day Job is that, as I said, I didn't have a band. I didn't have members of a band. We didn't have a rapport. So I had wrote 15 songs, recorded them onto my phone and sent them to a guy that I knew that played drums, and a guy that I knew that played bass, and a lady that I knew that played violin. And I was like, I really would like to record some of these songs. Would you be up for that? And they were like, yeah, not a problem. And then, you know, I was going 2 hours rehearsal with the drummer, and then jumping in a taxi and going for a 3-hour rehearsal with the fiddle player. And then I wouldn't get a rehearsal with the bass player until 3 weeks after that. By that time, I'd learned 10 of the songs with the drummer and 3 of the songs with the violin player. And then the bass guy would go, well, actually, I'd really like to do this because I've listened to this and this sounds really good. So then I would have to record that onto my phone, give it to the drummer and say, look, we've changed this wee bit. Can we do this? Basically, I was in way over my head. Organization has never, ever, ever been a skill of mine. And what I learned was that you need to rehearse these things. Musicianship gets you to a point, but when you're creating an album and you're going, a guy that I work with, a guy called Adam Holmes, I hang out with him a lot. We do a lot of recording together. He says, like, a record is a record. A record is a record. It's a statement of a point in time. I was like, yeah. So when I listen to that now, I'm like, I can hear my disorganized self throughout these songs. Whereas when I'm writing now, I've got like a little app on my phone. I've got things on the laptop. I can program in drum tracks, and I can mix and match bass parts, and I can write little violin lines and put them in. And I can say, right, that works really well. I can give that to a musician and say, look, learn this. I want it to sound like this. Do that. Because I've learned that being prepared is being best. So when going back to your question, to tell people about Day Job, it was my life from 17 to 21. Like, that was, all of those songs are about things that happened to me between the ages of 17 and 21. That's it. I sat on those songs for a couple of years after that. I didn't write very much for a couple of years because I was at uni and things were, you go through these dry patches. But then after uni, I was like, right, let's get this recorded and go for it. So if you want the folky angst of a 17 to 21-year-old, listen to Don't Quit Your Day Job. I think it's quite good. But the two songs that I would recommend, I'm going to recommend them for two different reasons, because I found that when I'm writing, there's two ways I write. There's the sit on it for 6 months and write it through think about every single word and make it work. And then there's the sit down and write it in 10 minutes and it's better than anything else you've ever written. So the song that I mused upon, I think I must have written over the course of a year. was Don't Quit Your Day Job, the title track. It was about 3 conversations that I had in my first year of being a musician. And each of the verses is about one of those conversations. And I'm really proud of it. I really am proud of it. It's a bit vitriolic. I don't feel these feelings as vehemently as I did back then. You know, we're all raging when we're 18, 19, 20, 21. Everything pisses us off. And now I'm kind of like, it's all right. So Don't Quit Your Day Job. And then the second tune, I wrote this in 10 minutes in my bedroom one night. And it was this kind of like real kind of floodgate moment. Like all of these things just kind of came onto the page, and it was really inspiring for me. And that's The Haunting. I don't know if you're familiar with that track on the album. It's slow, it's sad, it's really dark. I won't go into what it's about because it's very personal to me. So, you know, you can take your own meaning from what I've written, but it's a really dark song. So yeah, those 2 tracks. But I mean, those are 2, like I said, those are 2 kind of more verging on pogues and punk, a little bit of grunge kind of going on. They're not the folkiest tunes on the album. The album it's basically got 5 heavy punk influenced songs and then 5 folk songs that are quite nice to listen to. It's a bit of a kind of weird place.
So let's talk about some of your newer things. So in March, you just put out a new single, All Things Considered, which is I love that song. It's so bittersweet in a way that like it really made me think. And it's funny because we were jamming on it earlier before the interview. It reminds me a lot of the Locktay Boat song in just that tone, and just kind of like the bittersweet tone. It's really sad, but you also know that everything's ultimately gonna be okay, which is it's a really nice combination of things.
It's funny.
What's the song? Tell us a little bit about the song.
So it's funny. I've been with my fiance Darcy. You might have heard her coming in. That we've got a really squeaky door.
It's very squeaky. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I've been with her for 10 years now. Like, we're engaged, we're madly in love. You know, we want the hus and the dog and the kids and the cars and, you know, picket fence, all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But we went to a wedding of one of Darcy's friends. And one of the bride's mutual friends was my ex-girlfriend. And we were kind of like, the girl that was the bride was in our year at school, and she had like a circle of friends from school, which was my ex-girlfriend, my now fiance, and a couple of our other friends kind of dotted around. So we all sat at a table, and like my ex-girlfriend's there, and we had a lovely time. We were chatting away. There was no kind of bad blood or anything. And, you know, she had settled down with her, I think they're married now, her new husband. And she had a lovely house, and she had a dog, and she was booking a holiday, and, you know, her husband was getting a promotion at work and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, she was my first kind of real, you know, teenage, oh my God, I love this girl. Isn't it brilliant? You know, and that kind of night was just in the back of my mind, as these things are. And then I was in the local shop one night, and I overheard a song on the radio. I don't know what song it was, but the chorus stuck in my head, and it was just this da 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 da. That was it. That's all I could do. So I was in the kitchen making a cup of tea, and I was like, I've been doing all right since you, all things considered. And immediately my fiance was like, oh, Ciaran, what's that song? I was like, I don't know. I've kind of just, and she was like, no, those lyrics, I know those lyrics. And I was like, no, you don't, because I've just literally just wrote them while I'm making this cup of tea. And that was what I was saying earlier. It was that snippet, that little, oh, that's cool, I like that. And I put it down on a piece of paper, and then just all the thoughts of like, I'm with the girl that I love. We've got this lovely flat. We live in Edinburgh. She's doing really well. I'm doing really well. Everything's going really well. But I'm still thinking about this conversation I had with my ex-girlfriend. What can I make out of that? And all things considered, wrote itself in about 2 hours. So that was it, really. That's kind of the long and short of it. It's a kind of bittersweet retrospective breakup song with a happy ending.
Yeah.
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing while we've all been stuck at home, slowly getting allowed to go outside a little bit more. But what have you been doing, and where can people find your music, find your like streaming shows, all of that sort of stuff?
So I've been, this is such a weird time. Like, I think everyone that watches this can agree, it's just weird. Like the first 2 weeks of lockdown, I was severely like blue. I was down in the dumps. I sat on my backside. I drank way too much beer and played far too many video games. And that was kind of it. But I think I'd been working really hard. I was doing like 8 gigs a week for like since January, basically. I think I was a bit burnt out. Like I think I needed to just take stock, because immediately after those 2 weeks, I kind of woke up on a Monday morning and I was like, God, I was really tired, but I feel much better today. Which has made me reconsider what I'm going to do after it. But anyway, so, you know, I had a couple of weeks where I was playing guitar every day. I taught myself a couple of nice guitar pieces because I'm playing a wedding. I was supposed to be playing a wedding in, what are we in now? In April. I thought maybe I'd get down for the wedding. So I taught myself a couple of nice guitar pieces just to play in the background at the canapes and the champagne. I wrote an entire new song just off the cuff. I sat down. One of the techniques that I do is sometimes I'll sit down, I'll put 20 minutes on my phone and I will write a song. Doesn't have to be good, it just has to be finished. That's the only rule. Is it can be 2 verses, it could be 15 verses, it could be verse chorus. It just has to be finished by the time the timer goes off. So I would do that once a day, just write a 20-minute song, which is good. That's another thing that Adam Holmes, the guy I was talking about, taught me. You know, you have to use shit to fertilize to make the good things happen. So I was doing that, and then, you know, 2 weeks after that, you're 5 weeks into lockdown, and I go back to sitting on the couch playing video games and just, you know, it's just weird. I'm writing a lot. I'm trying to keep myself healthy. I'm trying to talk to my parents as often as I can. But I am doing these online gigs, which you can find probably linked this way or that way.
I think this way.
That way.
Down below.
That way. On my Facebook page, I'm doing gigs every couple of days. One of my very good friends, Grant Simpson, is set up a page called the Quarantine Gigs on Facebook, and it's basically people mostly from Edinburgh doing little hour sets, and it starts at 1 p.m. and finishes at 6, and you get 6 musicians every day. And I mean, it's just lovely. I've got kind of 20 people that kind of come religiously to every gig, and we have bits of banter in the chat, and we have a nice time. On a Saturday, I generally do a later gig, and we have a couple of beers together, and we sing pub songs and dirty songs, and 7 drunken nights and that kind of thing. It's just great. It keeps me sane because I really thrive off of entertaining people. I like smiley faces, and I like clapping, and I like happy people, and it's kind of helping to keep me from missing that too much.
Yeah,
I still miss it a lot.
It's tough. I mean, between being in a band and being a teacher, I'd go from seeing a ton of people all the time to seeing no one. And even as a teacher, there's a bit of entertaining you need to do to keep the kids interested. So not having that has definitely been tough. Well, Ciaran, thank you for joining us. We'll have links to where you can get Ciaran's music, where you can check out his gigs, all of that stuff in the description below. So thanks for joining us. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, just keep each other safe. Don't do anything silly in quarantine, and just look after each other. And if you're ever in Edinburgh, drop me a message and we'll meet up. It'd be great.
All right. Thanks, Ciaran.
No worries.